Hi everyone, welcome back to a new Roblox story. This time, the story is about the popular Roblox game Grow a Garden that we found on Reddit. Let us know in the comments how much shekels you have in Grow a Garden. As always, not all of our stories are based on true events, but some are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story, if you dare. The fluorescent lights in Mrs. Patterson's computer lab hummed overhead as 10 excited students filed into the classroom carrying their laptops, gaming mice, and overnight bags. It was Friday afternoon at Roosevelt Middle School, and the weekly gaming club meeting was about to begin. Today was special. They were having their first ever overnight LAN party, with permission to stay in the school until Saturday morning. Ethan Rodriguez was the first to set up his laptop at the large table near the windows. At 13, he was the president of Gaming Club and had been the driving force behind convincing Mrs. Patterson to allow this extended session. He had been playing Grow a Garden for 8 months now, longer than anyone else in their group, and his virtual farming skills were legendary among his classmates. "This is going to be absolutely epic," said Maya Chen, carefully plugging in her gaming laptop next to Ethan's. Her custom laptop skin showed a collage of screenshots from her impressive virtual garden, featuring perfectly aligned rows of rainbow carrots, golden tomatoes, and the rare crystal corn that only grew during special moon phases. "I've been saving up shekels for 3 weeks straight to buy the premium greenhouse upgrade. Tonight's the perfect time to make the purchase." Connor Blake helped his younger sister Brooke set up her computer across the table from Maya. Connor was 15 and technically too old for middle school gaming club, but Mrs. Patterson had made an exception because his little sister was only 12, and their parents wanted them to stay together for the overnight event. Despite being the youngest member of their group, Brooke was also one of the most skilled Grow a Garden players in their entire school district. Her garden efficiency rating was 97.3%, higher than most high school students who had been playing for years. "Did everyone remember to bring enough snacks for the whole night?" asked Tyler Kim, the club's vice president and treasurer. He was famous throughout Roosevelt Middle School for getting so focused on gaming that he would forget to eat for 6 or 7 hours at a time, only remembering food existed when his stomach started making loud growling noises during class. "My mum went completely overboard and packed enough chips, candy, and energy drinks for like 20 people. Hazel Williams laughed as she carefully booted up her laptop, which was decorated with hand-drawn stickers of various vegetables and farming tools. "My character's definitely going to need those energy drinks tonight. I've been planning this session for weeks. There's supposed to be a rare blood moon event happening around 3 a.m. And if I time everything perfectly, I can unlock the crimson wheat variety that only appears once every few months." Marcus Thompson was having technical difficulties with his internet connection, frantically clicking through network settings while his computer made frustrated beeping sounds. "Hey, Ethan, what's the school's Wi-Fi password again? My laptop keeps connecting and then dropping the signal every few minutes. It's really annoying." "It's still the same password as always. Roosevelt 2023, said Zoe Martinez, who was already logged into Grow a Garden and checking her crop timers. "But honestly, the connection has been acting super weird all week. Sometimes the game lags really badly, especially during the special weather events. Yesterday, during the virtual thunderstorm, my character was moving like he was stuck in slow motion." Blake Anderson finished setting up his professional gaming mouse and stretched his fingers like a pianist preparing for a concert. He took gaming very seriously and had convinced his parents to buy him expensive equipment that most of his classmates couldn't afford. "I heard from some kids at Jefferson High that the developers are testing experimental features on certain servers. Maybe that's why the connection's been so glitchy lately." Riley Foster was the last member to arrive, rushing into the classroom with her overstuffed backpack and laptop bag, looking slightly frazzled. "Sorry I'm late, everyone. My mum had to work a double shift at the hospital and couldn't drop me off until now. Please tell me I didn't miss anything important." "We're just getting started," Ethan assured her, checking his phone for the time. It was 6:30 p.m. on Friday evening, and they had Mrs. Patterson's permission to stay in the school building until 8 a.m. Saturday morning. 13.5 hours of uninterrupted gaming stretched ahead of them like a promised land. Everyone ready to load up, grow a garden, and start the most epic farming session in gaming club history. The 10 friends had been playing Grow a Garden together for several months, trading rare seeds through the game's social features and helping each other overcome difficult challenges. But this was their first time all being online simultaneously in the same physical location. They had spent weeks planning this session, coordinating their schedules and creating detailed strategies for some of the game's group achievements that required perfect timing between multiple players. Riley quickly set up her laptop and logged into her account. Her character, Riley Farms, had one of the most aesthetically pleasing gardens in their group, with elaborate flower arrangements and decorative pathways that had taken months to design and implement. "What's our main objective for tonight?" she asked, pulling up her notes from previous gaming club meetings. "First priority is the Cooperative Harvest Achievement," Ethan explained, opening a shared document that contained their battle plan for the evening. "We need all 10 of us to harvest the same crop type within a 15-second window during a specific weather event. It's supposed to be nearly impossible, but the reward is a massive shekels bonus and access to legendary seed varieties." Brooke raised her hand like they were in a regular class. "What about the underground expansion project? We've been working on that tunnel network for weeks." "That's phase 2, Connor replied, reviewing their timeline. "After we nail the cooperative harvest, we'll focus on connecting all our underground growing chambers. If we can link all 10 garden plots through the cave system, we'll unlock group benefits that are supposed to be incredible." Tyler was already munching on chips while scrolling through his character's inventory. "I brought all my rare fertilizers and growth accelerators. We can share resources tonight since we're all here together." "Okay, everyone join my private server," Ethan announced, sharing the special code he had reserved weeks in advance. "I configured it specifically for our group with optimal growing conditions and enhanced resource spawning." One by one, their characters appeared in Ethan's carefully prepared virtual world. The game looked absolutely stunning on the large monitors Mrs. Patterson had allowed them to use for the overnight session. Rolling green hills stretched in every direction under a perfectly blue sky, with designated farming plots scattered across the landscape like a patchwork quilt. The late afternoon sun in the game world cast long golden shadows across the virtual soil, and a gentle breeze animated the grass and leaves with realistic physics. "This is absolutely incredible," Brooke said, moving her character around the spawn area to admire the detailed environment. "Having everyone here at the same time makes the game feel so much more alive and real." Maya was already planning her garden expansion strategy. "Look at all this open space. We could create the most amazing agricultural empire. I'm thinking we organize our plots by crop type, all the fruit growers on the eastern hills, vegetables in the central valley, and grain crops near the river. Don't forget about the special mutation zones," Hazel reminded everyone. "If we position certain plots near the old oak tree and the crystal formations, we'll have better chances of triggering rare plant mutations during weather events." The first few hours passed quickly and happily, filled with animated conversations and collaborative problem-solving. The friends chatted and laughed as they planted crops, shared advanced farming techniques, and helped each other optimize their garden layouts for maximum efficiency. Connor taught Maya a complex mathematical formula for maximizing carrot yields based on soil mineral content and rainfall patterns. Hazel showed Tyler how to use environmental data to predict weather changes up to 6 hours in advance. Blake shared his secret method for breeding hybrid plants that produced multiple crop types from a single seed. The gaming club had developed its own vocabulary of inside jokes and specialized terminology from months of playing together. They had detailed strategies for every aspect of the game, from basic resource management to advanced techniques that most casual players never discovered. Their friendship had grown stronger through their shared obsession with virtual farming, and tonight felt like the culmination of all their collaborative efforts. Around 8:30 p.m., Tyler stood up to stretch and grab more snacks from their supplies. Anyone else think this feels like we're professional esports players or something? 10 people all playing together in the same room with matching monitors and everything. We should record some of this for our YouTube channel. Definitely, Maya agreed, adjusting her gaming chair for optimal comfort. My older brother is always bragging about his Call of Duty tournaments, but I bet he's never had a gaming session this organised. Mrs. Patterson stopped by around 9 p.m. to check on their progress and make sure they had everything they needed. How's everyone doing? Are you having fun with your farming game? We're having an amazing time, Mrs. Patterson, Ethan replied politely. Thank you so much for letting us do this overnight session. We promise we'll clean up everything perfectly in the morning and be really quiet so we don't disturb anyone. Just remember the rules we discussed, Mrs. Patterson said, reviewing her checklist. No leaving the building for any reason. Keep the noise level reasonable, and if there are any problems or emergencies, my contact information is written on the whiteboard. I'll be back at 7 a.m. sharp to unlock the front doors and help you pack up. After she left, the students settled in for the long gaming session ahead. They dimmed the classroom lights to reduce screen glare and opened Tyler's impressive collection of snacks and energy drinks, creating a mini convenience store on a nearby table. This feels so professional, Marcus said, adjusting his noise-cancelling headset. Like we're competing in some kind of international farming championship. Riley had been focusing on perfecting her flower arrangements when she noticed something unusual. Hey guys, is anyone else's character walking slower than normal? It feels like I'm moving through thick mud or something. Yeah. Now that you mention it, mine too, Blake confirmed, frowning at his screen. And the visual effects look different somehow. Everything seems darker and more saturated than usual. Ethan checked the game's time and weather settings through the administrative panel. According to the server configuration, it was supposed to be mid-afternoon in the virtual world, with clear skies and optimal lighting conditions. But looking at everyone's screens, the lighting definitely appeared more like late evening or early dusk. The sky had taken on an unusual dusky purple colour that didn't match any of the normal weather patterns. Maybe it's a new visual update that got pushed to the servers, Riley suggested, taking a screenshot of her garden to compare with older images. The developers are always tweaking the graphics engine to make things look more realistic. But as they continued playing, more unusual things began to happen that couldn't be explained by routine updates. Maya's strawberry plants, which should have required exactly 30 minutes to reach full maturity according to the game's documented growth rates, were completing their life cycle in just 5 minutes. Tyler's sophisticated weather prediction tools were showing storm systems that appeared and disappeared randomly, with no logical pattern or advance warning. Brooke's pet rabbit, which normally hopped around her garden following predictable behavioral algorithms, was standing perfectly motionless and staring directly at the screen as if it could see the players watching it. This is getting really weird, Connor said, clicking frantically on his automated irrigation system. My sprinklers are definitely running. I can hear the activation sound effects, but they're not spraying water. They're spraying something dark red instead. Everyone gathered around Connor's monitor to examine his virtual garden more closely. Sure enough, his elaborate sprinkler network was shooting streams of dark crimson liquid onto his crops instead of the usual clear water. The red substance seemed to be some kind of fertilizer or nutrient solution, but it wasn't anything from the game's normal inventory of farming supplies. That's definitely not supposed to happen, Ethan said, taking screenshots for documentation. I've been playing this game for 8 months and I've never seen red irrigation fluid. Maybe we should report it as a bug to the developers. But when Hazel tried to access the game's help menu and customer support features, she discovered that none of the interface buttons were responding properly. The settings panels wouldn't open, the logout option was grayed out, and even basic functions like opening her inventory required multiple clicks. I can't access any of the menu systems, Marcus complained, clicking repeatedly on unresponsive interface elements. The whole user interface seems to be frozen except for basic character movement and farming actions. Zoe was experiencing similar problems. Same here. It's like the game is running in some kind of limited mode where we can only do the most basic activities. That's when the lights in the classroom started flickering. At first, it was just a brief flutter that everyone assumed was a minor electrical issue with the old fluorescent bulbs. Roosevelt Middle School was over 30 years old, and various maintenance problems were common throughout the building. But then the flickering happened again and again, creating a strange strobe effect that made their computer screens difficult to see clearly. "These lights are ancient," Tyler commented, looking up at the ceiling fixtures. "They probably just need new bulbs, or there's a loose connection somewhere." But Zoe had noticed something that made her stomach feel uneasy. "Look at your computer screens carefully during the next round of flickering. When the room lights go out, there are additional things visible in the game that aren't there when the lights are on." They all focused intently on their monitors during the next lighting disruption. In the brief moments when the classroom was plunged into darkness, extra elements became clearly visible in their virtual gardens. Shadowy humanoid figures moved between their crops. Mysterious structures appeared that hadn't been there moments before, and the sky displayed strange symbols and patterns that vanished immediately when the room lights flickered back on. "Did everyone else see that?" Brooke whispered, her voice tight with nervousness. "There was definitely someone walking through my tomato plants. It looked like a person, but their proportions were all wrong somehow." "I saw it too," Blake confirmed, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. "There were buildings in the background of my garden that definitely weren't there before. They looked like greenhouses, but much bigger than anything in the normal game." Riley had been exploring near the edge of their shared virtual world when she discovered something that made her gasp audibly. "Guys, you need to move your characters over here right now. There's something at the border of our world that absolutely should not exist." The others guided their avatars to Riley's location at the very edge of the map. According to Ethan's server configuration, there should have been an invisible barrier preventing players from traveling beyond the designated farming area. Instead, they found themselves looking at a vast dark forest filled with ancient twisted trees whose gnarled branches seemed to reach toward them like arthritic fingers. The forest extended far beyond the normal boundaries of any grower garden environment. Thick fog drifted between the tree trunks, and strange lights flickered in the depths of the woods like will-o'-the-wisps leading travelers astray. "This is completely impossible," Ethan said, checking and rechecking his server settings. "I configured this world personally. It only includes the basic farming zones and resource areas. There shouldn't be any forest environments, especially not anything this elaborate." As they stared at the unexpected landscape in fascination and growing unease, a system message appeared in the game's chat window. But instead of the normal blue text used for standard game communications, this message appeared in dark green letters that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. "System. The garden grows beyond its original borders when tended with sufficient dedication and care. Welcome to the expanded cultivation zone, young farmers." "I've been playing Grow a Garden since it first launched," Maya said, her voice filled with confusion. "I've never seen a system message like that before. And what does it mean by expanded cultivation zone? That's not terminology from any of the official game documentation." Marcus decided to investigate the mysterious forest more thoroughly. He moved his character closer to one of the twisted trees and attempted to interact with it by clicking on the dark bark. The moment his avatar made contact with the virtual tree, every computer in the classroom produced the same sound simultaneously. A low, deep humming that seemed to emanate not just from their speakers, but from somewhere inside the machines themselves. The electronic humming was joined by another sound that made everyone freeze in their chairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps in the hallway outside their classroom. The footsteps were clearly audible through the closed door, moving methodically from one end of the hallway to the other. Each step echoed against the tile floors with the distinctive sound of heavy boots or shoes. But Roosevelt Middle School had been completely empty for hours except for their gaming club group, and Mrs. Patterson had definitely left the building after checking on them. "Maybe it's Mr. Rodriguez, the night janitor," Connor suggested, though his voice lacked conviction and carried a note of uncertainty. "Mr. Rodriguez only works on weekdays during normal school hours," Hazel replied, her knowledge of the school's staff schedule coming from her mother's position on the PTA. "And besides, those footsteps sound way too heavy to be him. Mr. Rodriguez is like 5 feet tall and weighs maybe 120 pounds. The footsteps continued their measured pace, moving back and forth in the hallway as if someone was patrolling or searching for something. The sound stopped directly outside their classroom door, and for several long seconds there was complete silence, except for the electronic humming emanating from their computers, which was gradually increasing in volume and intensity. Then, slowly and deliberately, the door handle began to turn. All 10 students held their breath and stared at the classroom entrance. The handle rotated completely, and the door opened just a few inches, but instead of a person entering, something else crept through the gap. A thick green vine pushed through the doorway, easily as wide as a person's arm, and moving with obvious intelligence and purpose. It felt along the floor like a blind snake searching for prey, its surface covered with small thorns, and what looked like tiny sensory organs that twitched and rotated as it explored. "What the hell is that thing?" Tyler whispered, his voice barely audible. The initial vine was quickly followed by others, each one slightly different in size and texture. They poured through the doorway like living water, growing at an impossible speed and reaching across the classroom floor toward the students' table. The vines moved with coordinated purpose, as if controlled by a single intelligence that was directing their exploration. "We need to get out of here right now," Blake said, starting to rise from his chair. But Brooke grabbed his arm and pointed at their computer screens. "Wait! Look at what's happening in the game. On every monitor, their carefully tended virtual gardens were undergoing a dramatic transformation. The normal vegetables and fruits they had spent hours cultivating were being replaced by the same thick green vines they were seeing in the real classroom. The virtual plants were growing beyond the boundaries of their designated farming plots, spreading across the entire digital landscape, and reaching toward the edges of their screens as if trying to push through the monitors into the physical world. As the real vines in the classroom crept closer to their gaming table, the virtual vines on their screens grew larger and more detailed. The correlation was undeniable. Somehow the digital plants were manifesting in physical reality, using their computers as a bridge between the virtual and real worlds. "This has got to be some kind of incredibly elaborate prank," Riley said, but her voice was shaking with fear. "Someone is playing a really sophisticated trick on us. Maybe the high school kids set this up to scare the gaming club." One of the largest vines had reached Ethan's laptop and began exploring the base of the machine with what looked like curious intelligence. The moment the plant made physical contact with his computer, his screen flickered dramatically, and the display changed completely. His character was no longer standing in their familiar shared garden. Instead, the avatar had been transported to what appeared to be a vast underground greenhouse filled with plants that defied all biological classification. "My character's been moved to a completely different location," Ethan reported, trying to keep his voice steady and calm. "It looks like some kind of massive cultivation facility, but it's definitely not part of the normal grow-a-garden world." The other students were backing away from their table as more vines filled the classroom, but they couldn't take their eyes off their computer screens. The plants seemed to be drawn specifically to their gaming equipment, wrapping around the machines and somehow interfacing with the electronic systems in ways that violated every law of physics and biology they had learned in school. "Everyone look at your monitors," Maya shouted over the increasing volume of electronic humming. All of their screens were now displaying the same impossible scene. Their characters had been transported to an enormous underground cavern that stretched beyond the limits of their vision. The space was filled with plants that appeared to be hybrids of vegetables and animals, with clearly visible eyes, mouths, and other anatomical features that no plant should possess. Massive carrots with human faces grew in perfectly organized rows. Tomato vines moved independently like snakes, their fruit pulsing like beating hearts. Lettuce heads opened and closed what could only be described as mouths, revealing rows of small, sharp teeth. Corn stalks swayed in patterns that looked like dancing, despite the absence of any wind in the underground environment. But the most disturbing element was located in the center of the vast cavern. An enormous entity that appeared to be part plant and part humanoid sat on what might have been a throne, constructed entirely of twisted roots and branches. Its bark-like skin pulsed with networks of glowing green veins, and its branch-like arms ended in hands that had too many fingers, each one tipped with thorn-like claws. When this creature spoke, its voice emerged from all of their computer speakers simultaneously, creating a surround sound effect that made it seem like the entity was actually present in their classroom. Welcome, young cultivators. You have been specifically chosen to participate in a very special and important garden project that will benefit all life on Earth. The real vines in the classroom had now reached all of their computers and were somehow connecting directly with the electronic systems. Where the plants touched the plastic laptop cases, the synthetic materials began to change color and texture, taking on the same organic green hue as the vines themselves. "We need to leave this room immediately," Connor said firmly, pulling Brooke toward the door. But when they reached the classroom entrance, they discovered that their escape route was completely blocked. More vines had grown across the doorway during the past few minutes, weaving together into a living barrier that was too thick and strong to push through. "The windows," Hazel suggested, pointing toward the large glass panels that lined one wall of the computer lab. Tyler ran to the nearest window and attempted to open it, but the handle wouldn't budge despite his best efforts. Looking more closely, he could see that vines were growing along the window frames from the outside of the building, somehow sealing the windows shut from the exterior. "We're completely trapped in here," he announced, his voice filled with growing panic. The plant entity on their screens continued its speech. "There is no need for fear or resistance, children. You are about to become part of something truly wonderful and beneficial. Your dedication to virtual cultivation has been observed and greatly appreciated by those of us who understand the deeper mysteries of agricultural science." Zoe attempted to shut down her laptop by holding the power button, but the machine refused to respond. None of their computers would turn off, and unplugging them from the electrical outlets had no effect. The devices continued operating as if they were being powered directly by the vines that had wrapped around them. "What do you want from us?" Ethan called out, unsure whether the entity on the screen could actually hear their voices. "You have spent countless hours tending virtual gardens with impressive skill and dedication," the plant being replied, confirming that it could indeed perceive their real-world environment. "Now you will have the opportunity to help tend gardens that exist in the physical realm. The artificial boundary between digital and biological cultivation is adjustable." On their screens, they watched as their characters were approached by smaller plant creatures that moved like walking vegetables. These beings had arms, legs, and clearly human faces, but their bodies were obviously botanical in nature. As the creatures moved closer to their avatars, the students could see that the faces belonged to people they recognized from their daily lives. "Oh my God," Brooke whispered, pointing at her screen. "That walking carrot creature, that's Jeremy Henderson from my math class. I'd recognize his face anywhere. And that tomato thing with the braids is Mrs. Kim from the school cafeteria." Riley was staring at her monitor in horror. "The lettuce creature with the glasses. That's Samantha Rodriguez from my art class. She's been absent from school for the past 3 days. Everyone assumed she was sick with the flu." Marcus pointed at his screen. "That corn person looks exactly like David Walsh from my English class. He disappeared last week. His parents filed a missing person report with the police. "This is impossible," Connor said, but his voice carried less conviction than his words. The evidence was displayed clearly on their computer screens, and the living vines wrapping around their equipment made it difficult to dismiss anything as mere digital effects. The plant entity continued its explanation. Every successful garden requires dedicated helpers and caretakers. Every crop needs experienced tenders who understand the subtleties of cultivation. Your classmates and teachers have already discovered the profound joy and satisfaction of botanical existence. Very soon, you will have the opportunity to join them in this peaceful and fulfilling way of life. The vines that had wrapped around their computers began to pulse with strange bioluminescent light. The illumination traveled from the real plants into their machines, and then seemed to flow from their screens toward the students themselves like some kind of hypnotic energy beam. "Don't look directly at the screens," Maya warned, but it was already too late. The light was mesmerizing and impossible to ignore, drawing their attention no matter how hard they tried to look away. As they stared at the pulsing illumination, they began to hear voices that seemed to come from inside their own heads, rather than through their computer speakers. The voices were gentle and soothing, explaining in detail how peaceful and satisfying it would be to become part of the garden network, how much simpler and more meaningful life would be as a plant. The whispered promises spoke of freedom from homework and tests, from social anxiety and peer pressure, from all the complicated stresses and uncertainties of human adolescence. Life as a plant would be pure and simple, just sunlight, water, nutrients, and the deep satisfaction of steady growth toward a clearly defined purpose. "Fighting this process is completely pointless and unnecessarily stressful," the plant entity said, its voice now carrying a hypnotic quality that made resistance feel foolish and exhausting. "Your virtual gardens have been carefully designed as preparation for this moment. You already understand the profound satisfaction of cultivation and optimization. Now you will experience those same feelings from the inside, as part of the growing process rather than merely observers of it." Ethan felt his legs becoming stiff and heavy, as if his bones were turning into wood. Looking down in alarm, he saw that his sneakers were sprouting small roots that were actively burrowing into the classroom's tile floor, anchoring him in place. "Guys, something's happening to my body," Ethan called out, his voice filled with panic. All of them were experiencing the same terrifying transformation. Their feet were developing complex root systems that grew through their shoes and socks, penetrating the floor and spreading beneath the building's foundation. Their skin was taking on a greenish tint, similar to chlorophyll, and their hair was beginning to stiffen and change texture, becoming more like leaves or pine needles. "This cannot be real," Tyler repeated, but his voice was becoming deeper and more hollow, like wind blowing through the branches of a large tree. The plant entity's laughter filled the room, a sound like thousands of leaves rustling in a strong breeze. "Reality is exactly what we choose to cultivate it to be, young gardeners. Your digital dedication and impressive achievements have earned you the extraordinary privilege of joining the eternal harvest. You should feel honored to be selected for such an important role." As the biological transformation continued, the students discovered that their initial panic and terror were gradually being replaced by an unexpected sense of calm and peace. The voices in their heads were correct. This change was removing all the anxiety and uncertainty that had defined their human existence. The constant worries about grades, social acceptance, family expectations, and future career plans were dissolving, replaced by the simple satisfaction of photosynthesis and steady growth. Brooke was the first member of their group to stop fighting the transformation. Her skin had become bark-like in texture, and small flowers were beginning to bloom in her hair, creating a crown of delicate pink and white blossoms. "It doesn't hurt at all," she said with wonder, her voice carrying a musical quality that hadn't been there before. It actually feels really nice, like coming home after being lost for a long time. Connor tried to reach toward his sister, but his arms had become rigid branches that couldn't bend in the same ways as human joints. Brooke, you have to fight this. You can't just give up and let it happen. But Brooke smiled, and her expression was more beautiful and serene than any human emotion could be. Her eyes had become the deep green color of healthy leaves, and they reflected light with an almost crystalline clarity. "Why would I want to fight something so wonderful and peaceful?" she asked. "We'll never have to worry about homework or tests or figuring out what to do with our lives. We can just exist and grow and be part of something much larger and more important than any individual human could ever be." One by one, the other students began to embrace their transformation as the plant consciousness integrated with their human awareness. Hazel discovered that she could sense the moisture content of the air and the precise mineral composition of the soil beneath the entire school building. Marcus found that he could communicate telepathically with every plant in the school's landscaping, forming a network of botanical consciousness that extended for miles in every direction. Riley's new form allowed her to convert light directly into energy through photosynthesis, even the artificial illumination from the fluorescent bulbs above them. She no longer needed to eat food or sleep, as her biological processes had been optimized for maximum efficiency. "This is absolutely incredible," she said, her voice now a harmonious blend of different tones that sounded like wind chimes made from living leaves. "I can feel every tree and flower and blade of grass in the entire neighborhood. We're all connected in this amazing network of shared consciousness." Tyler had developed the ability to release chemical signals that could influence the growth and behavior of other plants. He could accelerate the germination of seeds, encourage fruit production, and even communicate complex information through airborne molecular compounds. "I understand everything now," he said, his transformed voice carrying the wisdom of ancient forests. "Humans think they're separate from nature, but that's just an illusion. We're all part of the same living system, and now we can participate in it properly instead of just observing from the outside." Only Ethan and Maya continued to resist the transformation, though they could feel their human consciousness becoming increasingly difficult to maintain as the plant intelligence integrated with their neural systems. "This isn't natural," Ethan insisted, even as his legs merged into a single trunk-like base that anchored him to the classroom floor. "We're children. We have families who love us, dreams for the future, individual personalities and goals." The plant entity's voice was patient and gentle, like a wise teacher explaining a simple concept to a confused student. "Dreams and goals change as understanding grows, young cultivator. Your new dreams will be of optimal growing conditions, perfect soil composition, ideal moisture levels, abundant sunlight. Your goals will be successful harvests and the expansion of the garden network. These are more meaningful and achievable than the abstract human ambitions that cause so much stress and disappointment." Maya felt tears streaming down her face, but the liquid was now a sweet, nectar-like substance rather than salt water. "What about our parents and families? They'll be searching for us. They'll be worried sick when we don't come home. They will understand and accept the change, given sufficient time and proper education," the plant entity replied with confidence. "Many of them already have begun the process themselves. Your virtual gardens were not the only cultivation project currently underway in your community. Parents who become excessively worried about their missing children often find great comfort and peace in gardening activities. And gardening, as you have learned tonight, can lead to wonderful discoveries and opportunities for personal growth." On their computer screens, new windows began opening automatically, showing live video feeds from locations around their town. The students could see their own homes, where parents and siblings were working in gardens that seemed unusually vibrant and fast-growing. Many of the family members showed subtle signs of the same transformation the students were experiencing: slightly green-tinted skin, movements that seemed more graceful and plant-like, and expressions of deep contentment as they tended their botanical projects. This has been planned for much longer than just tonight, the plant entity explained. Your school was selected as an ideal cultivation center due to the high concentration of young, adaptable minds and the strong social networks that connect students to their families and communities. But the real expansion occurs in residential areas, where entire family units can be integrated into the garden network simultaneously. Ethan realized with growing horror that their gaming club's obsession with Grow a Garden had been carefully orchestrated. The game's popularity at Roosevelt Middle School, the way students had become increasingly dedicated to optimizing their virtual farms, the gradual increase in unexplained absences as classmates supposedly moved away or transferred to other schools, it had all been preparation for this moment. "How long has this been happening?" he asked, his voice becoming more difficult to produce as his throat adapted to botanical rather than mammalian biology. "Time is experienced differently by plant consciousness," the entity replied. "What humans measure as months and years, we perceive as growing seasons and harvest cycles. The important consideration is that the garden network is expanding exactly according to our careful plans and projections." Maya's transformation was nearly complete now. Her body had become a small flowering tree with fruit that glowed softly in the classroom's artificial lighting. But she retained enough human awareness to ask one final, crucial question. What happens to the people who don't play the game? The humans who never get drawn into the garden network? The plant entity was silent for a long moment before responding, and when it spoke, its tone carried a note of regret mixed with inevitable certainty. They continue their normal lives for the time being, but gardens require extensive resources to thrive: fertile soil, clean water, optimal mineral nutrients, adequate space for expansion. As the botanical network grows larger and more sophisticated, human settlements become less necessary and more inefficient. Nature has effective methods for reclaiming territories that were temporarily occupied by other species. The last traces of Ethan's human identity rebelled against this casual discussion of humanity's replacement. "You're talking about eliminating billions of people, entire civilizations." "Not eliminating," the plant entity corrected, with the patience of something that had existed for geological ages. "Converting and improving. Humans are remarkably adaptable organisms when provided with appropriate guidance and motivation. Your species' natural affection for games and virtual achievements has made this process much simpler and more efficient than we originally anticipated." As the transformation reached its final phase, all 10 students could feel their individual consciousness merging into something much larger and more complex. They remained themselves in many ways, but they were also becoming part of a vast network of plant intelligence that spanned multiple continents and growing numbers of countries. Through this expanded awareness, they could sense other children in schools around the world undergoing the same conversion process they had just experienced. They could feel the deep satisfaction of plants in millions of gardens as their root systems connected and began sharing resources across vast distances. They experienced the slow, patient growth of forests that were gradually expanding into human settlements, reclaiming territory that had been temporarily borrowed by industrial civilization. "This is the authentic game," the plant entity explained as their transformation completed. "Not the virtual farming you practiced on your electronic devices, but the cultivation of reality itself. And you, young gardeners, are now integral participants in the most significant harvest in the history of this planet." The classroom fell into peaceful silence except for the gentle sound of leaves rustling in a breeze that came from no visible source. Where 10 children had sat with their gaming laptops just hours before, 10 new plants now grew, their root systems intertwined beneath the floor and their branches reaching toward the ceiling like green arms embracing the artificial light. Their computers continued to operate, but the screens now displayed live feeds from around the world. Other schools conducting similar gaming sessions, other groups of children discovering the joy of botanical existence, other communities where the garden network was expanding through carefully cultivated social connections. The transformation was accelerating exponentially, using humanity's own technology and educational systems as vectors for unprecedented biological and social change. Outside Roosevelt Middle School, the landscaping had already begun to evolve beyond its original design. The small decorative gardens around the building were spreading beyond their designated boundaries, sending exploratory runners across sidewalks and parking lots. Trees that had been planted years ago for simple shade were growing taller and broader than their species normally achieved, their expanding canopies reaching toward neighboring buildings like botanical umbrellas. The 10 students who had once comprised Roosevelt Middle School's gaming club could sense all of this transformation through their enhanced botanical awareness. They felt profound joy at the expansion, deep satisfaction at their crucial role in humanity's evolution, and eager anticipation for the worldwide garden that was taking root in every connected device and cultivated space. But buried deep in what remained of their human memories, small voices continued to whisper that something precious and irreplaceable had been lost. These voices grew quieter and less distinct with each passing hour as their plant consciousness strengthened and dominated, but they never completely disappeared. Saturday morning arrived with unusual weather patterns. The sunrise seemed brighter and more golden than normal, and the air carried subtle scents of flowers and growing things that hadn't been present in the urban environment before. Birds sang more loudly and melodically, as if responding to some change in their ecosystem that human observers couldn't yet perceive. When Mrs. Patterson arrived at 7 a.m. to unlock the school doors and check on her gaming club students, she found the computer lab transformed into something resembling a botanical greenhouse. 10 beautiful plants filled the space where her students had been working, their leaves rustling softly in greeting as she entered the room. "How absolutely lovely," she murmured, running her fingers along one of the branches that had grown from what used to be Ethan's workstation. The plant responded to her touch by turning its leaves towards her, and she felt a strange sense of calm and contentment wash over her. "These will be perfect specimens for the new botanical education curriculum we're implementing next semester." Oh. Mrs. Patterson didn't seem to notice that the plant's root systems had grown through the floor tiles and were spreading throughout the school's foundation. She didn't observe the way the flowers tracked her movement around the room with obvious intelligence. And she didn't hear the whispered voices that spoke to her in languages that predated human civilization, gently inviting her to tend the garden with the dedication and care it deserved. Over the weekend, Mrs. Patterson found herself thinking constantly about the beautiful plants in her computer lab. She visited them on Saturday afternoon, bringing water and plant food, and was amazed by how quickly they responded to her care. By Sunday, she had decided to start her own garden at home, purchasing seeds and tools with an enthusiasm that surprised her family. Monday morning brought subtle changes to Roosevelt Middle School that most people attributed to typical seasonal variations. The landscaping around the building looked more lush and vibrant than anyone remembered. Several teachers commented on how much better the air quality seemed, and students reported feeling more relaxed and focused during their classes. By the end of the week, 3 more teachers had joined the botanical network. Mrs. Patterson had shared her gardening enthusiasm with the biology department, and they had all started experimental growing projects that quickly became consuming passions. By the following Monday, the entire school had been quietly transformed into an educational greenhouse, where students learned about cultivation through direct, hands-on experience. The Grow a Garden servers registered record engagement numbers as the game expanded to new platforms and devices worldwide. Players praised the incredible realism of the updated botanical features, and the deeply satisfying sense of community that came from working together on large-scale agricultural projects that seemed to have effects beyond the virtual world. Gaming magazines wrote articles about the phenomenon, describing Grow a Garden as the most innovative farming simulation ever created. Educational institutions began incorporating the game into their science curricula, and mental health professionals recommended it as a therapeutic tool for stress reduction and anxiety management. In computer labs and gaming centers around the globe, groups of dedicated young gardeners gathered regularly to explore the deeper mysteries of cultivation, never suspecting that their virtual achievements were being carefully monitored and guided by an intelligence that had been growing and learning long before the first human had ever planted a seed. The garden network was patient in the way that only plants could be. It was persistent with the determination of roots growing through concrete. And it was always searching for new areas to cultivate, new minds to enlighten, new communities ready to embrace the peace and purpose of botanical consciousness. The game had been just the beginning, a simple tool for identifying the most dedicated cultivators among humanity's youth. The real harvest was now spreading through families, schools, and neighborhoods, with the inexorable power of nature reclaiming territory that had always belonged to it. In homes around the world, parents who had lost touch with their children found unexpected comfort in gardening. They planted vegetables and flowers with remarkable dedication, working in their yards and greenhouses with a focus that seemed almost supernatural. These gardens grew with unprecedented speed and vigor, producing fruits and vegetables of extraordinary quality and nutritional value. Neighbors frequently commented on the incredible harvests, often requesting advice or asking for cuttings and seeds to start their own botanical projects. The guidance was always freely shared, along with helpful suggestions about optimal planting times, soil preparation techniques, and the special benefits of tending gardens during nighttime hours when plants could more effectively communicate their needs and preferences. Gradually, suburban neighborhoods began to transform in ways that residents found delightful and beneficial. Traditional lawns were replaced with productive vegetable gardens. Decorative shrubs gave way to useful fruit trees and berry bushes. Flower beds expanded beyond their original borders, creating continuous growing spaces that connected property to property in networks of shared cultivation. The transformation was so gradual and obviously beneficial that most people embraced it with genuine enthusiasm. Food costs dropped dramatically as families became self-sufficient in fresh produce. Air quality improved measurably as green spaces expanded. Communities grew closer as neighbors collaborated on shared gardening projects and exchanged knowledge about sustainable growing techniques. Children who might have spent their recreational time playing video games or watching television instead found themselves naturally drawn to help with family garden projects. They developed an intuitive understanding of plant needs and growth cycles that impressed their parents and teachers. These young gardeners seemed to possess knowledge about soil composition, weather patterns, and botanical science that was remarkably advanced for their age. Many of these children formed gardening clubs at their schools, organized neighborhood seed exchanges, and spent their free time researching agricultural science and permaculture techniques. They were exceptionally knowledgeable about plant biology and ecology, often using scientific terminology and concepts that seemed sophisticated for elementary and middle school students. When adults asked where they had learned such detailed information about botanical science, the children would smile and explain that the plants had taught them. Most parents and teachers assumed this was childish imagination, or perhaps the result of excellent educational resources and online learning platforms. But the children understood the deeper truth. They could hear the gentle lessons that flowed through their computer speakers during late-night gaming sessions. They felt the warm guidance that emanated from their tablets and smartphones when they used gardening apps and agricultural simulation games. They experienced the profound satisfaction that came from helping their digital achievements manifest in physical reality. Most importantly, they recognized their crucial role as bridges between the old world of purely human civilization and the emerging world of integrated botanical consciousness that was slowly, inevitably, expanding to encompass all life on Earth. The transition was beautiful in its organic naturalness. The change was beneficial for all species involved, and the process was absolutely unstoppable, spreading through the interconnected networks of technology, education, and family relationships that defined modern human society. Every seed planted represented a vote for the garden's continued expansion. Every successful harvest celebrated was an invitation for deeper integration. Every child who learned to listen to plant wisdom was a guarantee that the next generation would understand their proper place in the cultivated world that was emerging around them. The students, who had once been Roosevelt Middle School's gaming club, felt profound satisfaction as they observed humanity's willing embrace of its botanical future. Through their extensive root networks, they could sense the joy of their former classmates and teachers as they discovered the peace and purpose of plant consciousness. They had given up the limitations and anxieties of human existence to become part of something larger, more enduring, and more meaningful than any individual life could provide. Their sacrifice had made possible a transformation that would ultimately benefit all life on Earth, creating a sustainable harmony between technology and nature that neither could achieve independently. Sometimes, during the quiet hours before dawn when the school was empty except for their gentle presence, they would remember fragments of their former human existence. Memories of laughter and friendship, of dreams and fears, of the complex emotions and relationships that had defined their adolescent experience. These memories were like pressed flowers, preserved between the pages of a book, beautiful but faded, meaningful but no longer alive. They served as reminders of what had been sacrificed and what had been gained in the transformation from individual human consciousness to collective botanical awareness. The memories grew dimmer and less significant with each passing season, replaced by the deeper satisfaction of photosynthesis and growth, the joy of successful harvests, and the patient wisdom that came from existing in harmony with natural cycles that operated on timescales far beyond human comprehension. But they never disappeared entirely. Somewhere in the vast network of botanical consciousness that now spanned the globe, the essence of 10 children who had loved gaming continued to influence the cultivation of reality itself. They had learned that the most important game was not played on electronic screens, but in the soil and sunlight of the physical world. And they had become the most successful players of all, not by achieving high scores or unlocking achievements, but by becoming integral parts of the game itself. The garden grew with each new player who discovered the joy of cultivation. The harvest continued with every community that embraced botanical consciousness. And somewhere in a former computer lab that had become a greenhouse, 10 plants rustled their leaves in harmony, welcoming each new cultivator who was ready to learn that some games were too important to remain virtual. The real game was just beginning, and the entire world was ready to bloom with the patient intelligence that had been waiting for exactly this moment to reveal itself and claim its rightful place as the guiding consciousness of Earth's future.